Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Baseball Without Borders. It's been a little while because I've been on jury duty. I'm Leif Skodnick, and I'm joined by my colleague Matthew Tallerini. We are from WorldBaseball.com, the World Baseball Network, your site for Major League Baseball coverage, as well as coverage from around the baseball world outside of the United States. And we're going to start off today, Matt, about a month from now, down in San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador. The Central American and Caribbean games are going to be played. Nicaragua and Curacao have their rosters set. Any big surprises there, and who do you like?
So right now there's an 18 field in San Salvador for the baseball sector, the Central American and Caribbean games. A lot of pretty much upcoming prospects that will be playing in this tournament. Cuba will have a lot of top prospects on their rosters filled from Serie Nacional that's happening right now. The Elite League that happened for the first year this past winter. And I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of top countries. Like Mexico will definitely bring certain supplements of their roster with guys in affiliate baseball. Nicaragua will have a sector of guys from their Herman Palmares League that's happening right now during the spring and summer circuit, along with the Liga Baseball Professional Nacional circuit. That's their winter league. And a lot of the other countries mentioning too: Dominican Republic, host nation El Salvador, Puerto Rico, and Venezuela, Curacao. I mean, there's going to be a lot of good players that are going to come out of this event, even with the chance to sign with the major league organization.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what comes out of the Central American and Caribbean games down there. Let's talk about the Nicaragua roster a little bit. Sandor Guido, again, the manager for the Nicaraguans. Your thoughts on the team they've put together? They didn't include the best mustache in the World Baseball Classic.
Juan
Diego Montes, yeah. Not on the squad. But they have a pretty good roster put together. Anybody that stands out to you?
Sandy Bermudez, he pretty much stands out for me. I think he's going to be a good player for Nicaragua during that upcoming circuit of their tournament. I mean, this tournament is a big, pretty much pipeline assignment that a lot of these players, they want to play into either a Major League Baseball organization or even play independent in the United States. And I think a lot of what we saw in Nicaragua from the World Baseball Classic, I mean, those guys were putting up a fight in certain middle innings against Puerto Rico. You could say some games, some parts of Venezuela, until Venezuela, drove the boat race off the rails. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Nicaragua's there to compete. And I think that, them haven't placed high since the 2020, qualifiers of the U23. They placed third before COVID happened. I think this team has a shot to really medal at this event. And I think what Sandor Guido and Marvin Bernard building of how they evaluated building up this roster, I think that they know what it takes to, stride in these events. Even a guy like Marvin Bernard that has played in Major League Baseball and has played in international tournaments when he was playing.
Yeah, and then let's take a look at the roster from Curacao, which one of the Dutch, Netherlands possessions in the Caribbean. A lot of great players have come out of Curacao and the ABC Islands in general. Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, of course, making up the ABC Islands down there just off the coast of South America. But Curacao on the rise as a baseball nation. We're going to see them at the Caribbean Series in February of 2024. Mm-hmm. But they've got a pretty good roster put together for this event. A lot of their major league prospects may not be on this roster, but they still have a pretty good team.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much their circuit of the AA, Single A, and Rookie League that they have in Curacao. That's how much of what they're trying to abbreviate on placing in this roster, what they want to build around for the talent on their island. I mean, guys like even Didi Gregorius made that list. He made the pre-selection roster list. Andrelton Simmons. So they'll try to figure out what they can evaluate on this roster, just as similar to the Caribbean Series and the Caribbean Cup that happened in the Bahamas in December. I think guys like even Dudley Lenora, I think he'll shock a lot of people too. Darren Seferina, those were key guys that really helped Curacao qualify from the Caribbean Cup in December to even appear in the Central American games for next month. So Central American and Caribbean games for next month. So yeah, I think, the roster they have is pretty much built around depth and pitching also. You'll see guys like I feel with one key guy, Nelmerson Angela. He's been doing well too in certain past tournaments that he did pitch in. Jordan Lucas also. Those are two pitchers to really watch out for on the Curacao pitching staff that they might bring with them to El Salvador next month.
Up in Toronto, some fireworks, and not just Aaron Judge at his hot bat, but Domingo Germán chucked for having a foreign substance on his hand. And now this is the second time this year that something has come up with Domingo Germán, who's a pitcher for the New York Yankees, having so-called sticky stuff on his hand. The first time he was made to wash his hands, same umpiring crew, by the way, involved. 3 of the 4 umpires last night involved in the first time that Germán was caught with sticky stuff on his hand. Last night, he's ejected, and obviously Max Scherzer of the Mets was suspended for 10 games for this. Comes with a 10-game automatic suspension, so Germán is going to be sitting down for 10 games, barring some kind of appeal. And, of course, now I see that he has opted not to appeal, so he's just going to serve it, I think. But, I get why Major League Baseball cracked down on sticky stuff and spider tack, and obviously we've seen the effect that it has had on some pitchers. Garrett Cole, obviously not as effective without using spider tack or any of the other goop that he was putting on his hands. But at the same time, this, while it does give the pitcher the ability to impart more spin on the ball and create more movement on pitches, it's also very difficult to control a baseball without, at minimum, putting rosin on your hand of some kind. And so, the myriad substances that pitchers apply, between rosin, sunscreen, whatever else, your hand gets sticky. In some ways, it needs to be sticky, but how do we establish what is too sticky? I don't know that that's actually been done yet.
No, it hasn't been done yet. I mean, there's probably certain technology that could be obtained with MLB protocols, but then you gotta, look through the rule book of what they want to intact. I mean, they have a collective bargaining agreement going on until 2026, but with all the supplements that's being taken place now, with the gain advantages of players trying to sneak in either foreign substances or use even over a pen pine tar on some noted deal offensively. I mean, as this generation keeps growing of where we're living in, I think MLB has to go about the protocols and, search that if these starting pitchers are going to gain an advantage, have some checking protocol before the game that you can note on, if the starter does have a legit start in the stat book, but if he doesn't and he's caught with a foreign substance, I mean, we can't see this all the time in Major League Baseball now with how technology is going about in the day we live in for guys that are still doing this or maybe, get under the radar for doing this. But yeah, Germán, I mean, just like Michael Pineda a few years ago. I mean, it's just unfortunate. And I think in this point of his career, like where is he going to go after this too? Like, not a lot of major league ball clubs are going to see, just a prominent end of if Germán himself can maintain his mechanics if he keeps getting into these types of incidents.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly unfortunate for Germán and for, he's going to miss 10 games, going to probably miss 2 starts because of this, probably, be under heavier scrutiny as he should be, right? Like if you get ejected for this, then you should be scrutinized a little more thoroughly. But MLB had to do something to try and rein in the sticky stuff. I just don't think they've been particularly effective at it. Also happening in the Yankees-Toronto series. Little controversy over the stationing of the Yankees' third base coach, as well as Aaron Judge looking over to the dugout seconds before hitting a ding-dong Johnson. Matt, what do you make of all of that?
I mean, I just think that either the Jays are sour, that Judge is just another... He's on another planet, honestly. Like, with his talent, how he basically like puts the barrel into the baseball. I mean, we haven't really seen a guy that has really been consistent on this hitting mark since Alex Rodriguez with the Rangers. I mean, that's what I see in Judge's career right now. But to say that, on the Blue Jays side, right, that, he gained an advantage just to look into the dugout, like, how did he know the pitch was coming? And I just feel like he's that good of a player, just like how Shohei Ohtani is, regarding the two-way, understatement of, or just the two-way aspect of what Ohtani's been doing the last few years in Major League Baseball. But Judge, I just think he's that good, and to recognize certain pitching throughout the AL East.
I mean, without having seen the game and only having read the coverage because I was on jury duty and then I'd have to get home and get dinner on the table and take care of the kids, his eyes going back to the dugout does not necessarily mean anything. And I think in the wake of the Astros sign stealing years ago, now everybody's paying attention to every little thing that's going on in a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could he have been getting something from the dugout? Sure. Could he also have been picking up a sign from the dugout? Like, maybe it was that. Maybe somebody's figured out that somebody's tipping his pitches and they're relaying that. And if you figure out that somebody's tipping if the opposing pitcher's tipping his pitches, that's not cheating. That's baseball. Don't tip your pitches.
Yeah.
Like, and by tipping pitches, for those of you who are not, quite as familiar, sometimes pitchers will do certain things before they throw a certain pitch. So, like, if Matt scratches behind his right ear every time he throws a curveball and he scratches behind his right ear before the next pitch, guess what? Probably going to be a curveball coming.
Or tucking the seams differently.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that maybe somebody picked up on. Anyway, I think the Yankees are always a franchise that everybody loves to hate, and that's the price of success. Same thing with the Red Sox. I personally, until there's more, I think the Astros are grasping at straws, and the same thing goes with the, positioning of the third base coach, Luis Rojas, the other night. They were getting upset about that. He was outside the coaching box, and yeah, there are rules, and the coaches are supposed to stay within the box, but how often do you really see the coaches inside the box, and how often do you see that enforced? One of the things that is important to interpret is not just the rule, but the spirit of the rule. And if you're going to really go after a guy for being outside of the coaching box, that okay, it's gamesmanship, but it's a little bit picayune, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like the different ethics in baseball, it's like it's coming to a point where, yeah, technology's just sparring into the game. I mean, we're seeing a lot of stuff with, how is it determinative if pitchers got to really come set now? We're seeing with how the game is evolving now. The pitch clock has made a big part of it in the last month and a half of the start of the 2023 Major League season. And I just think that, a lot of rules are definitely obtaining in the game in certain metrics. But, coaches, the same deal. It's like, if you're trying to give a sign too now, it's like you got to be in the coaching box. Like, but sometimes they don't stand in the coaching box to see what other signs are given to them or what other batters can relay to, gain an advantage of knowing what the sign is. So, I mean, that's baseball. Everyone needs to gain an advantage somehow.
Well, that's baseball, Susan. Last night, Jorge Soler takes care of business for the Miami Marlins against the Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Take us through that.
Yeah, they were down by 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning, and down to their last strike, Arias, the batter prior, gets an RBI single, and then Soler comes up. I mean, down by 1 run, and to win in that fashion against your divisional opponent, I just think the Marlins, they have what it takes to either make a run at this season and surprise the baseball world, or even be a scrappy club to knock certain top teams in their division out of the playoffs. I just think like the team they have with Jazz Chisholm, unfortunately he's sidelined now 4 to 6 weeks. Yuri Perez, maybe he becomes a pitching phenom for the Miami organization. Jesus Luzardo had a good outing yesterday. I think that certain key pieces, even in their offense with the Reyes and Garrett Cooper, I think they can really take the long step here of being a really great team prior to the All-Star break.
Quarter of the way through the season, the Miami Marlins 21-21. I probably would not have picked them to be in second place, 5 games back of the Braves at this point. And I definitely wouldn't have picked them to be ahead of Philly and the Mets. I had thought they were going to be above Washington, and that would be it. I also didn't think Washington would be just 3 games back of second place at this point. I figured Washington would probably have 12 wins right now, and they've won 6 more than that.
Yeah, I mean, the Nationals have a young team. It's only a matter of time of what, really Dave Martinez can, see in that roster. I mean, like guys like Victor Robles have been with that organization for a while. How is Patrick Corbin going to still maintain his mechanics after having a couple lopsided, unexpected seasons? So, I mean, the Nationals itself, I mean, I just think that they're not going to have really much of a deep season this year. I think they'll be at the bottom of the basement in the NL East. And, the young talent you did give the Padres in that, that trade with Juan Soto during the middle of last season, I think that's going to derail them for a while. I think, even of what they're dealing with as an organization. Honestly,
I mean, they sent a huge bat out of the lineup in that trade.
Yeah, Juan Soto. I mean, yeah, the
and
trade.
I mean, granted, he hasn't done anything for San Diego since going over there, but he was great in Washington, and sending that bat out of there was probably a big mistake, I think, on the Nats' part. But speaking of anticipated events, Justin Verlander made his first start at Citi Field and was booed off the mound after giving up 2 home runs to Isaac Paredes, among others. I wouldn't say Verlander's been a disappointment, but when you put that much money into a 40-year-old pitcher, sometimes this happens.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that Verlander doesn't have the same mechanics like he did in 17 and like the certain years he did have in Detroit, at the beginning of his career. Now I think like now the offenses on most major league teams, they kind of know what to expect from a veteran guy like Verlander. I think his slider's not that efficient anymore. I mean, can he still throw 101 at his age consistently? I mean, that's another question we saw from a few years ago in his late 30s. I just think that I don't think Verlander can really top out at a good season this year and possibly get to 13 wins. I just don't think, Verlander will have a good season with the Mets, possibly have like less than a 3.7 ERA, which is, not so Verlander-like throughout his career. But, yeah, I mean, that Rays lineup is deep, though. I mean, yesterday, like, Jose Siri hitting a solo home run, and then Isaiah Paredes with 2 home runs. I mean, that lineup is going to be just, in full force, I think, come September, honestly, with the Red Sox and the Yankees chasing them.
Looking at Baseball Savant, which is Major League Baseball's website where they keep all kinds of TrackMan data, Verlander's 4-seam fastball is averaging 94.6 miles an hour this year. He's thrown 140 of them, which is 50.2% of his pitches. 94.6 miles an hour, nothing to shake a stick at, but it's not what he used to have. His slider, which he throws 31.9% of the time, swings and misses 22.2% is the whiff rate on that. He's certainly still effective. I mean, as far as pitching wins go, pitching wins are basically, now we all know that they're a worthless stat. And if you need an explanation on that, feel free to email me, life@worldbaseball.com, and I can explain to you why the pitching win's a worthless stat. But basically it's because it's arbitrary, right? The official scorer can award the win, or if you meet certain criteria, you get the win. But if you don't meet certain criteria, you don't get a win, or you can only get a loss or a no decision, which is ridiculous. It's not based on anything substantive, which is why pitching wins don't matter.
Unless you have an offense.
Well, yeah.
If you have Jacob deGrom gets no run support. Well, we can say on the Mets side of his career.
Yeah, exactly. Easy to win 31 games with the 68 Tigers when they have Al Kaline and those guys behind him. Denny McLain. But Denny McLain also probably made like 50 starts that season, which makes it easier to win 31 games as opposed to the 35, 36 games that most guys start nowadays. Verlander, they paid him a lot of money, but I think it was foreseeable that they were not going to get the Justin Verlander of old. One more thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap this up, Matt. Baseball United announced their first team, which is going to be in Mumbai, India, the Mumbai Cobras. I know you've talked to Cash Sheikh a little bit, who's the guy that's behind Baseball United, which is aiming to be the first professional league in South Asia and the Gulf region. Do you think this is going to work?
The thing is that I think it's going to be like a true facelift in a way that maybe it could work in a sense of how could they transfer they said a billion cricket fans pretty much in that part of the world, that they're going to have to know about new rules of a sport they're used to, right? So like cricket and baseball, yes, cricket is an older sport than baseball. It's been around for 600 years.
Comparing cricket and baseball is like comparing a zebra and a horse, right? They look the same, sort of, but they're not the same.
They're not the same base running tactics. They're not the same inserted mechanic alignment stuff. But what do we know when $1 Million Arm happened practically 10 years ago? And what Tom House saw and Deep at Debishkala and one of his teammates around India. So, I mean, now that a league that is going to be played at the Cricket National Stadium in Dubai, 4-team showcase is going to start in November. Their player pool is pretty, phenomenal, with some guys that might, I open you a little bit. Bartolo Colon got selected in their player pool. I wonder how that's going to turn out for Big Sexy.
Well,
during November to play in Dubai.
The pitching probably won't be as good, so he might restart his career as a power hitter.
Yeah, so we'll see that display. We'll see some guys that did play in certain international events in the last few years, the Premier 12, the Olympics. Some guys from the World Baseball Classic rosters that were in the lower upcoming countries like the Czech Republic, Panama, Chinese Taipei probably, and even with their own legal alignments. So this league is going to be pretty much aligned with the scouting in the independent leagues in Japan and the United States, all the international federation professional leagues throughout the world, all the other international main leagues in Mexico, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, the Australia Baseball League, which runs during the winter. Certain guys that got released in minor league baseball down the line in their career also had, pretty much career ends playing in, independent league baseball in the United States. So, I mean, if you have Mariano Rivera, Adrian Beltre, Barry Larkin, I think those guys can really landscape why baseball is a global sport, but they're going to have to make a big task to do it in, a demographics of 2 billion people that live there and approximately 1 billion cricket fans to transfer over for what we could say America's pastime to the global side of the sport, since we are World Baseball Network. So I think that this is a huge task, and I think of what they're going to have to arrange around guys that just got released, had trailed professional careers, and I think the recruiting will be big for this league, but it's a big task to just promote baseball in that part of the world that's not familiar with the sport. I mean, I've had colleagues even that have been to Italy, to cities like Nettuno, Parma, Bologna, and baseball has actually grown in those 3 parts of Italy pretty consistently over the years. But if you go outside of those cities, they don't even know that baseball exists. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a range of what they have to leap in this. But Felix Hernandez, too, he's buying into it as well, as being one of the majority owners for one of the Baseball United franchises out east. So I think it's going to be a really big task to see what they're going to have to fume in through the finances, through the promotion scale, and through the player pool of what that's going to take of the league to carry that talent and bring talent over consistently.
Well, we will see, and hopefully we go to the showcase in Dubai in November. Although that's a long ways off, and
after the World Series.
So who knows exactly what we will get to and what we won't. But so we'll be back probably Monday with another podcast. Before we go you're going to the Big 12 baseball tournament. I'm going somewhere.
We're going to try to build up our mock drafts, I guess.
To somewhere to be determined. Probably, hopefully the ACC, but possibly the Pac-12. And we should know about that in a little bit. But we will have another edition of Baseball Without Borders for you on Monday. Remember to keep the sticky stuff off your hands, so you get a 10-game suspension. As always, check out worldbaseball.com for our written journalism. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram. I'm Leif Skodnick. He's Matt Tallerini. Until next time, smoke 'em inside.